Good evening, friends, and welcome to episode 3 of our parenting conversations brought to you by the Life, Marriage and Family Office of the Catholic Archdiocese of Sydney. Last week, we spoke to Dr. Andrew Mullins about the tweens, that critical period in our children's lives between infancy and between the teenage years. Andrew spoke about the importance of establishing the virtues in our children's lives, and also encouraging them most specifically to set high ideals for them so that they can be generous, that they can look out for others, and also that they can seek to make a gift of themselves in love for other people. Tonight, we're going to look at the teenage years, and I find that very, very exciting. Even though we've had lots of our own children who have gone through those years, there's still two that are there. So is it exciting? For many parents of young children looking forward to those teenage years, there might even be some sense of foreboding, some worry. And so tonight, to help us unpack this so very, very interesting period of the parenting experience, I have the great pleasure of introducing you to tonight's guest speaker, Miss Katrina Alvir. Welcome, Katrina.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for being with us. Just by way of introduction, Katrina, you are a secondary school teacher. You're the director of REAL, which is the Science of Character program at Tangara School. You're a mentor and speaker on parenting and teaching for character and positive psychology. Katrina has taught and mentored high school girls and their parents for over 22 years. So again, we have someone of the highest caliber, highest level of experience. Thank you, Katrina, for being here. You've completed a diploma of positive psychology in Melbourne. You're a trained teacher and mentor. You're still working right now directly with adolescent girls in schools. You're passionate, and that's what we want to hear. That's why you're here, about supporting parents in their most challenging and important roles, guiding daughters through these adolescent years. We mentioned already about the project about REAL, which stands for Real Excellence and Attitude for Life. We'll actually come back to that at the end, because I think straight away that would pique parents' interests. Katrina, just by way of starting, would you like to tell our parents listening in tonight a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I grew up in Ryde, in the area of Denniston, a beautiful leafy suburb. I actually went to the little public school there called St. Therese Denniston, which I loved because it was a small school, it was like a big family.
Yes.
My family background is Filipino. So my 3 siblings and I were raised to love the 4 important pillars of life, which are faith, family, friends, and of course, food and karaoke. So of course, yes, blasting that out, even though most of my family can't sing. And then we came to Australia in 1980. And interestingly enough, where we were living, there were very few philos, as we call them, at school and in that area. But that wasn't really an issue because my mum loved how multicultural Australia was. And she really instilled in us love for people, seeing beyond differences, seeing beyond race, and to really see, each person for who they are. So she had heaps of friends from many countries. She'd come home with all these different dishes, from curries to rice. So we love that. And I guess she instilled in us that really beautiful conviction, powerfully put by St. Josemaria, that there's only one race, the race of the children of God. So that for me has really helped me to make many, many friends. And now I currently work at Tangara School for Girls in Cherrybrook. You may have heard about it last year with all the news. But we got through that. We got through that. That was a resilience building at its best.
Yes.
And my interests are, I was thinking, oh my gosh, what are my interests? I was thinking it's so connected to what I do. It's a bit geeky, but anyway, my interests are people. So understanding people from the inside out. So I love psychology. I love to know how people, figure out what influences people, what makes people tick, personalities, temperaments, that kind of thing. So, and I love learning about the different generations as well, generation X, Y, Z, and now there's Alpha. So I enjoy that kind of stuff, plus photography and cinematography, and the depiction of beauty. I love things to do with like images and photos and Yeah, so that's pretty much.
It sounds like you're in love with the human experience and the human person.
Yeah,
When
definitely.
when I was hearing you say that, it reminded me of, I think it was, what was that book called? Anyway, John Paul II, in one of his later interview books, he said, I fell in love. This is as a young priest. He said, as a young priest, I fell in love with human love. And what I was hearing you there, even, I mean, human love encompasses the whole human person and the human experience. So,
I'm definitely passionate about John Paul II. He's like my hero.
There you go.
So,
okay, okay, for
Yeah.
sure. I'm happy that you can see that side.
Yeah.
Up there, I got that in 1986. There you go. Okay, Katrina. I wanted to just mention the Filipino. I didn't even know Filipinos existed till I was about 16. And then I had some friends up in Rudy Hill, which is a mini Philippines in itself.
Right.
And been very great. We have great friends in the Filipino community, and all our children were blessed to grow up with very close Filipino friends. So we know the great gift that Filipinos have brought to our country, and especially to the church, and not just in Australia. I don't think I've been to a country where I haven't met Filipinos. Even in Malta.
That's right. There's always some little old Filipino lady praying in the back of the church.
Well, Father Calloway, who is one of the big instigators of the Year of St. Joseph, he credits his conversion experience to those good Filipino, I don't know if you call them nonnas or mamas.
Lolas.
Okay, in the back of the church, praying the rosary.
That's right.
Okay, let's move on. We're here to help parents, and specifically in a direct way about it's a formation conversation, isn't it? So you're passionate about delivering formation, especially to young adolescent girls, but also their parents, and that's quite intentional, is it? That it's not just about our children that we want to give the good news to, but we want our parents to know also, what we're saying to them, and also for them to have the best formation they can, to be the best parents they can. How did you become so interested in this, to the point where you've invested so many years and moments of your life to this area?
As you know, I'm first and foremost a teacher of high school girls. So for me, I remember reading somewhere, you don't so much teach a subject, but you teach people. And for me, I was like, oh, you know what? I really want to dedicate my life in understanding the people, the persons that I teach and the persons that I mentor. And once I started, diving into that, I've been, I have to acknowledge the great wisdom of and expertise of amazing educators like Stenson, Isaacs, Andy Mullins, Dr. Colston, Biddulph, Campbell. Maybe we can give you a list of these things later on. But and positive psychologists like Dweck, the lady who wrote about grit, Duckworth, growth mindset, Peterson. So what I'm talking about, I'm not going to even pretend that this is all my stuff. It's more like I've distilled what resonated with me over the 20 years, and this is the stuff that I'm putting into practice. So that's what I want to offer to parents, because life's so crazy. Parents can't read all that stuff. Parents can't put in that much, time into, all the research, but I can put the research into a really practical package that will, first of all, just confirm. Many parents are just doing an amazing job, and all they want is confirmation that they are, on the right track. So some parents are like, oh my God, thank you for letting me know that setting boundaries and saying no and making them learn from their consequences, I'm not a mean parent. Because every day teenagers will tell their parents, you are the worst parent, or you're not like this person. And I'm just there to give parents confidence. No, in fact, you're pretty much, because God's given every parent the grace of state of being a parent. So many times parents just need that confirmation. And what I talk about is age-old wisdom from from before. And I think parents, they can lose confidence because, it's just very crazy. And teenagers are so good at even playing mom and dad off from each other. So I think the unity between the parents is so important. The values having really clear, like, what are the battles we're going to fight and what are the battles we're going to like just let it go through. So for me, I love just supporting parents to know that, yep, guys, you're on the right track. It's okay. You're not a bad parent. You're not a mean person. You're a good parent. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
And parents need to hear that, because sometimes, unless they are speaking to other parents and hearing, oh, wow, they're going through the same thing. Sometimes you can start out and think that, this is just unique to our family situation. Yeah. And if you stay in that own, bubble of your own unique family experience, you can think it's just unique. Yes. It's just me going through this. And also, I liked what you said, because, I've tried to go through all these books.
It's overwhelming.
I've tried to go through all these books. I've got too much to read. I could keep bringing them back. But anyway, there we go. And that's only 5%.
Those were really good books you put. I love that one.
I saw your list that you were just mentioning, and I thought, okay, I'm not doing too bad with my library. Have to get it into here.
Yeah.
Okay. Look, you mentioned there, that terminology, generation. What is it? X, Y, Z, and
Alpha.
We often hear that come up, whether it's about the music that we used to like, or our children like today, or if they're talking about what their interests are, or whatever. I mean, it's really generation whatever, but it is something that's very specific, and the educationalists especially like to look at these experiences in certain periods of time to say, okay, well, how do we present a pedagogical approach for this specific type of learner? Do you want to just mention that quickly in a way that we can just understand what you're talking about in that, so we can be quite present to the last one that you're going to focus in on?
Okay. So first of all, when I do these sort of have conversations with parents or presentations about the different generations, I can see, a lot of parents just slowly deflating in front of me, thinking like, can I ever connect with my children then? Like, they seem so different to me. And I always want to start off with the conviction, or with just like that key idea that, okay, guys, for sure, they're very different, and I'll go through the differences. But essentially, they're still human beings. Yeah, they're still exactly in a way like us. And looking back, since I've been mentoring and teaching mentoring teenagers since the mid-90s, because I started off being like a kind of youth leader, and then right into from the 2000s on, so I have actually mentored and taught Gen Y, Gen Z, and Gen Alpha. And of course, within 3 generations, there's been 3 generations in the space of 20 years, which is very quick, compared to other generations. But to never lose hope in the sense that we can always connect, because human nature, the human heart, doesn't evolve as fast as technology. God has made us in a certain way to long for the good, the true, and the beautiful. And if you just take the time to think like, what my daughter or what my son really wants is a lasting happiness. What they want in their core is exactly what I want as well, and if you overcome those superficial sort of barriers of the differences, and even think back, like, what was I like as a teenager? What were my hopes? What were my dreams? What were my fears? You can always find a way to connect with them. So for sure, they're generations, but I do want to tell parents, you can connect by just going back to, every heart wants the same thing, which is to be wanted, to be loved, and to be known. So if they can see you're genuinely wanting to know more about them and you're interested in them, then that's always going to work. I think this comes from, Dr. Colson, but he says, I want the best of me to talk to the best of you. So if we come with already that kind of mentality, they're so different to me, we talk a different language, they're all these like lol whatever, and all of their gadgets, well, then we're going to already put them off. But if we go, I'm going to bring the best to this conversation so that you bring your best, that will really pay off. At the same time, I think if we let we're like, oh yeah, that's just the way they are, and just let them off the hook with everything, then as James Stenson said, you either pay now or you pay later. Like there are some things that no matter what generation you come from, that's wrong, that's rude, apologize, go back to your grandma, be nice to her. You know what I mean? Like there's certain things where you have to be like, I don't care what generation you're from, that's not virtuous. And I think that's important. So going back to your original, did you want to interrupt me?
No, you just make me think of things when you bring up so much wisdom. Well, the first thing that it made me think, as you were saying about the best of me speaking to the best of you, we often don't think that way. We often just think that I want the best for my child. You know, the best, as Matthew Kelly says, you know, to be the best version of yourself. But straight away, that just made me think, okay, that I have to always be thinking, what's the best version of myself?
Absolutely.
And like you said there, and then that took me to a deeper realization in listening to you then, that I have to know myself in order to do that.
Yeah.
And isn't that the deepest question of the human person? And one of the biggest problems that we have today of identity, and we want our children, we know that they're experiencing issues of identity across the board, but we also can, you know, have that problem because I've never spent that time to really, you know who I am. Sometimes we can be too busy wanting that for our children, but we have to slow down ourselves. So
absolutely,
you know, it's a good thing. Okay, so let's go a little bit deeper. Tell us about who our teenagers are today. What's their generation? I have, you know, in this collection of books that I have, you know, I've got this big red book that I think I read half of it. You know, iGen. Are they iGen or not?
Okay, so I think before I start going through, I'm going to basically talk about Gen N and Z because they're the ones that are actually teenagers now. That's Alpha are little people. Okay, that's Marina Haynes' area. Okay. But I think what's important when we talk about generations, that's generalizations overall. Okay, yes. And I'm actually going to talk about the work of Mark McCrindle, who is an Australian demographer, and he's also a social researcher. So this is particular to Australia, which is really interesting because, you know, obviously we're very global, so it could probably relate to all the other teenagers around the world. But as I said, they're general, but also every generation thinks they're better than the other generation. Like you're just like, oh, Gen X, we're just so cool. Like we didn't care about followers. We just were rebels, whatever, you know. So I think it's really important to remember, like, every generation is not better or worse. They're just different. Okay. Saying that, so Generation Z or
I won't
N,
let my kids hear that. Because...
Okay. So Generation N, they're called Generation N because they're the digital natives. Okay. And they're called Generation Z because they come after Y. So they're sort of synonymous, N and Z, just in case you get, you know, confused. They're basically born between 1995 to 2012. So that's the kind of age range. So the earliest Generation Z are actually Generation X children. So that's interesting. And they're unique because they've grown up with the internet. They basically don't know life without the internet. So when I talk to them about dial-up, they're like, what is that? You know? When I showed them, actually I showed them like one of the phones that we used to use, you know, the ones, the rotary, like, and they said, Miss Alvir, by the time you call 000, you're dead. Because it's like zero's like right at the end. Like, I'm like, oh my God, that's so true.
Very, very practical generation.
I know, they're very practical generation. So they make me laugh. Yeah. Then they're very networked, and they also, everything's at a touch of a button. Okay, so for sure, we're like, oh my God, they're snowflakes. They're so fragile. Everything's instant gratification. But part of that is because that was available to them. So for parents, what I say, anything where you make them wait, anything where you make them work towards a long-term goal rather than instant feedback, instant gratification, that's so good. You know, so when they get impatient, like, why do we have to wait? To say, look, this is great for you because you don't actually have to wait for very much, you know? So take advantage of all those waiting moments. I think even lockdown, where they have to wait to be released, take advantage of that. To say, okay, look, you always get you get everything like this. This is good for your character. Okay, so there are 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5 things that make them distinct, which is they're global. So while we probably were exposed to music or television or media that was quite local, they are linked in real time with the global world. So fads, memes, trends, they're instant. You know, they're onto it straight away. You know, I used to have to wait for like that Teen Beat magazine or something. I don't know, like I had to, you know, and then you just get little posters. At the same time, say like I loved Mariah Carey or Guns N' Roses back in the 90s, but you know, they were not the paragons of virtue, but I had no access to their lives. I don't know how they lived, but these guys, they not only like, you know, love these people, they can see everything these people do, and plus
what they're having for breakfast.
Yeah, exactly. And also like just their lifestyle, which isn't always very healthy or ethical. So that's one thing. They're very visual. So if they can find a video about that information and press play and just look at it and listen to it, they will opt for that. Yeah. And they're very digital, they're connected. The generation before, we use technology for a purpose. Technology isn't there for a purpose. Technology is like life. It's integrated into their life. So that's why, you know, at Tangar, I collect their phones. You know, we have this policy at the beginning of every day, then I give it back. So I'm like, everybody, give me your organs, give me your organs. And they're like, it is like taking an organ, seriously. And at the end of the day, they're like, can we have our organs back? I'm like, yeah, here's your organs. But I mean, I make fun of it, but at the same time, for them, it is like an organ, sadly. Okay, and they're very...
So that's actually a real phenomenon. Then understanding that young people at this age can have meltdowns when they lose their phones.
Yes, yeah. Well, especially sadly if they're very addicted as well. It's like withdrawal symptoms from any kind of drug. Recent studies show that in Australia, young people don't wear watches anymore. They just, everything's on their phone or their smartphone. Oh, now they have their smart watches or whatever. So the other day I was saying to them, girls, see, look at this. This is what we used to use when we went out, like, and we wanted music, like a ghetto blaster. And they're like, that is so, like, not very portable.
Oh, cool.
It's not very portable. Like, it's massive. And I'm like, yeah, I know, guys. Like, what can we do? You know? And then, and did you know, like, there's about 4.7 billion searches a day on Google. So they're just always searching, they're always on the net. And the last thing that I find really interesting is they're socially defined, in that when you think about it, when we had friends, we go to school and then we'd switch off and go home. They are like connected to their friends who are global, but also 24/7. No wonder there's so much angst in that whole area of pressure, image, bullying, because for some kids, unless their parents step in, they never switch off. They're always on call. They're always performing. So I find, and it wrecks their sleep. And
they're always tired.
Yeah, and it definitely impinges on family life. So I think there should be sacred spaces at home where, like, no phone. It's family time. We're talking. We're having a meal together. So because of these things, I do feel like they're probably going to kill me, the girls, but I do feel like they are more entitled. They're a more entitled generation. They kind of want to start off their life where their parents ended. They want the kind of car and the house their parents had, kind of that they worked for, but they feel like that's what they should have from the beginning. Not all kids, but some kids who, haven't been shown otherwise. They also can be unrealistic about what life should be giving them. And so they're more fragile, because when those things don't come straight away, they melt down a little bit. So because of that, they can be a bit less emotional resilient as well.
Okay, but, let's just jump down a little bit deeper into what's happening in their minds. We talk about that development there of their prefrontal cortex and all that. What's happening there? I mean, this is part of the area of psychology that you can tell us more about. Yeah,
I can tell. Look, I'm not a neuroscience, and I never really want to be, because like going into brains is not my thing, but I do
help us to understand. You know more than us.
yeah. So I do,
Okay.
but I do find it fascinating. And why I went into this area was because I was just getting frustrated as a mentor. I'd be teaching kids all these organizational skills. They got it for a week, and then for some reason it seemed like they got amnesia, and they were just like disorganized again. And they themselves are like, I don't know what's happening. And so I was thinking, what's going on? And what's actually happening during that adolescent period is that their brains are pruning. So there's this thing called use it or lose it principle. So whatever part of the brain they use the most, that becomes stronger because it gets pruned and then it grows again. Because what's happening is the brain isn't made, the brain's made to get stronger and to be pruned for a long-term adult brain. But what happens is with the prefrontal cortex, that's the part of the brain that develops, takes longer to develop because it's more complicated, and it develops right until for girls early 20s, and for boys probably even later. So sorry guys, it's actually a long haul till adulthood, but hang in there, okay? So, but the prefrontal cortex is the executive center of the brain, so it's planning ahead. This will all be like ringing bells. You're like, oh my god, yeah, they're so bad at that. Organization, weighing out risks, predicting consequences of your actions, delaying gratification, controlling your emotions, understanding, understanding the consequences of your behavior. So the brain's rewiring there, and so that hasn't. They're a work in progress. And for me, when I started realizing that, I just became more patient and I took things less personally. So if a girl turned up and, she accidentally forgot this thing or didn't turn up for a mentor session, I would just say to her, that's right, sorry. I said, just try to put in your diary, but I'm not going to lose it because you know what? You're a work in progress, and that's okay. And they can see that I'm trying to understand them, and they're like, okay, I'm really going to try next time. But before I would actually, as a young teacher, I would actually get pretty annoyed. Why can't you just get this right?
Didn't I just say this to you?
Exactly. I'm sure parents can really, relate to this. So, so that's one thing that's happening. Another really interesting thing, and it will explain so much, is sometimes you feel like your teenagers or your students just don't read your emotions very well. And they think you're angry and you're actually concerned. Or they think you're judging them, but you're actually just thinking through what they're saying. And what they found, studies show that even though the teenage brain is the same size as an adult brain, the part that can read emotions, that can understand, those, subtle nuances of facial expressions, that hasn't actually, been finished, building. And even when they did studies on really high IQ teenagers that were off the Richter scale in terms of intelligence, those kids also couldn't understand emotions. So for example, maybe your son will come home really late and you're like, where are you? Where have you been? And really you're scared, the mom's really worried and scared. And the son's like, oh, you're judging me, or you're just angry. And then it becomes a big fight. So yeah, I think all the way through a conversation, especially if it's some more serious conflict related conversation, it sounds silly, but through the conversation, you have to sprinkle things like, I'm not actually angry. I just want to understand you. I'm not angry. Let's talk this out. And if you actually are angry, which you justifiably probably are, I would probably say, let's talk at a different time, because that's just going to explode into a big shouting match. And so it's probably better to say, hey, you know what? You came home really late last night. You go to bed. We'll talk about this tomorrow. And they'll probably have a harder time with that, because they'll be in bed going, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? I'm going to be grounded for you'll actually make them reflect on what's happened rather than them go to sleep going, oh, they're overreacting, blah, blah, blah. You know what I'm saying?
So what you're saying here is really about their capacity for critical thinking. It's part of this, developing stage. It's going to come. And it will come in fits and starts, so to speak. But it's as parents, it's our job as the adults, and that's again why we're doing this, to recognize it and to know that this is happening, I suppose it's happening at different stages for our children, depending on what line of the scale of being a teenager they're at, those very early years, or even when they're 17, 18. So that's quite a few years to be developing in, say, 13 to 18. There's a wide,
a long even after 18, I think.
Even after 18.
Definitely. So
what we're saying, it's when we're actually recognizing this, we can actually say that it's quite beautiful, because they're growing, they're moving out.
Exactly.
We said last week with Dr. Mullins about moving from those infancy years into the tween years, and so much is happening there. But if we're really interested in them as persons, and especially persons that are our own children, we can say, well, this is just part of them growing as young people, and we have to be aware of what's happening with them, not to put extra pressure on them, but just to help them to understand where they mightn't be living up to that best, as we mentioned before, that best version of themselves. Now tell us about the development of I suppose that relationship intimacy that we can have with our children at this time in their lives.
So before I go into that, I think I just want to say a few things about like what is typical behavior of a teenager, just to let parents know that you're not going crazy and that you haven't done, it's not your parenting that has caused these changes to happen. I often go to the primary school just to get my self-esteem back because they're just so loving, they're so straightforward, they just tell you, Miss Alvir, oh, you look so nice today, that kind of thing. And maybe you look back with nostalgia, like my daughter when she was that age, or my son. And I'm just going to go through a few signposts that's going to happen, but also it's absolutely natural. And it's not because they're a bad kid or you're a bad parent. Okay. I don't know if that would be helpful. Okay.
Of course. Give it to us. Yeah.
All right. So definitely they're going to start moving away from you and being more concerned about their peers. That is natural because that's actually part of entering society. If they just had no friends and never went out, that would be a bit more of a worry.
And we can say that probably happens quite early, because we caught a little bit of that at the end of the tween.
Did you? Yeah, exactly. That's natural. They do also become very self-conscious. Everything is embarrassing. You are embarrassing. They start walking a few meters away from you while you're at the shops or something, So one dad said to me, when my girls were little, I would reward them for being good on the train by singing them a little song, and they loved it. And now that would be a punishment. If I sang anywhere near their friends or did any dad jokes, I would just get it afterwards from my daughters. So he's like, I don't know what's happened to them. I said, that is absolutely natural. Don't do that. Don't do that anymore.
Well, that's why we do dad jokes in that period.
Yeah, exactly. Just to keep them real. Okay, they're going to be definitely more self-absorbed, more moody, more emotional. The hormones kick in. Angry. The most angry moment of your life will be in your adolescent years. There's just a level of anger that it's just, So I'm not saying it's right, but I think things are changing. And because they don't have the word to explain what's going on, it kind of evolves into some kind of anger because they don't even get themselves most of the time. I remember one girl, I said to her, what is wrong with you? Like, you're so in this funny mood. She goes, Miss Alvir, I don't even know what's wrong with me. I said, fair enough. That's okay. I have those moments too. So they get really insecure and they do a lot of comparing because they also want to be noticed by their peers, which gets dangerous with things of social media because they'll do anything just to get followers or likes, which is another topic in itself. They do become lazier. So sometimes really diligent little kids, in primary school, suddenly they go through a bit of a slump, a lack of motivation. I find, this is what I find with the girls. I find it happens more like year 9 and 10. And then they're like, oh my gosh, HSC, and it goes back up again. So that can happen too. There is a yearning for greater independence, which brings in what you said. They become more critical. They become argumentative. They start to contest authority. They start to push boundaries. that's not because you're a bad parent or they're a bad kid. Like, that's part of them trying to understand, like, what is it out of all these things my parents are teaching me, what is it I'm going to keep and make my own, and what is it that I'm going to reject? And we all pray to God that they keep all the, the true and the good things, but the way we don't force it. We have to convince, we have to inspire, and that happens with conversation. That's why I'm so big on healthy communication, because the reason is no longer because I'm your mom, because I'm your dad, because I said so. Their brains are developing. They need reasons. They need, deeper reasons. So a lot of conversations should be happening during this adolescent time for them to realize, like, you tell them to do these things, or you live a certain way because you have deep convictions and deep reasons, which is actually good for us because it challenges us to really stop and think, like, yeah, why do I do that? Like, why do I go to mass, or why do I pray, or whatever it could be? So I think that's really important, is that give them reasons, because what you want to meet in 10 years' time is a person that has deep reasons for why they live a certain way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it is. And if I can just jump in here, you've actually provided me with a quote that we can speak about in this conversation, which is just fantastic. It's from Pope Francis, and what you're saying there, you're speaking to the as existential side of us. Where are we going? Can I just read this out, what Pope Francis said, and we'll just move on from that point. Mm-hmm. The real question then, the Pope says, is not where our children are physically. Often we get tied up, just on that question. Where are they? What are they doing? Mm-hmm. Or whom they are with at any given time, but rather where they are existentially, where they stand in terms of their convictions, goals, desires, and dreams. The question I would put to these parents is this: do we seek to understand where our children really are in their journey? Where is their soul? Do we really know? And above all, do we want to know? Wow, that comes down into that whole thing we're talking about being intentional parents. Do you want to comment about that?
I think it is very tempting to feel like you're doing your parental job, and me as a mentor, my mentoring job, just to even know, like, okay, yes, she's eating, she's sleeping, she's basically, or he's basically, I know where their whereabouts is. And that is important. Like, you can't be like clueless and go, yeah, where the heck's my kid? Like, yeah, that's important. Okay. Like, oh, it doesn't matter. I know that he's like loves God. No, like that, you need to know that he's home at like 12 p.m. or 12, at night. But I do feel like there is the more challenging part is to know, like, where they are in terms of, like, their convictions, or what do they think about the values you hold up as a family. And that's trickier, because that means we need to have our reasons, but we also need to be open to having our values kind of questioned and challenged, and we need to stay calm and then explain. And still, we might not win, it's not winning the argument first conversation. It's actually what's really going to be the clincher is how we live our life. Like, if they see us, the thing that kids are really good at, they're like hypocrite detectors. They're really good. They're like, you said this, but you did that. Like, girls always say to me, Miss Alvir, how come I can't wear a double piercing? You have one. I said, I am a teacher. I am like so much, this old. I could do that.
Isn't that the end answer? I'm a teacher.
So anyway, and I think for us, this is really important, because part of them becoming an adult is the use of their freedom. We can't control them. They need, in a way, they become an adult when they use their freedom responsibly, and they have self-control, and they have their own dreams and their own projects that they're willing not only to dream about and hope for, but they're willing to put in the hard yards and take responsibility of all the consequences that happen with the decisions they're making. So definitely, like, I think the scary part of them going through this stage is that, they're free. God's given them freedom. God's given us freedom. They have original sin just like us, and they've got their weaknesses. But precisely with our loving guidance and our patience, and also our ability to love them unconditionally and help them go through, work through those mistakes, talk through what could have been done better, then there won't be barriers, and they won't be hiding those things, or hiding like, actually, I don't believe the same thing as my parents, but I'm not going to talk to them about that. Like, things will be out in the open, and we can discuss those things, and that way we can navigate them. But when when they feel like they have to be perfect, they can't make mistakes, they have to be a certain way, then all of that's going to be underneath, and we'll know where they are physically, but we'll have no clue of where they are existentially. Does that make sense?
Yeah, great. And I heard there's 3 words that jumped out in just that part of the conversation. I'll start from the middle, actually. You mentioned 2 words together, freedom and responsibility. Oftentimes we can get caught up as parents in, we have to tell you what to do. You have to make sure you're doing the right thing. But, just to be aware of that great gift that we've been given of freedom. And we want our children to know that. We want them to have those experiences of making decisions that they've had to actually look forward, that these might be the consequences here, and that you'll have to be responsible for. But in all of that, another thing, and the other word that Pope Francis finished his little paragraph with was the word dreams. And isn't that something beautiful? Like, if we can even just ask our children at that age, what are your dreams?
Okay.
I know a lot of young people at that age, their parents, have got their whole life mapped out for their children, which is, it's very real. I can't deny that I've heard that happening. But we can flip that by just asking, what are your dreams? And even if they sometimes don't even know, what their dreams might be, or they've never even given them that opportunity themselves, the opportunity to think that widely, that broadly, it might set something in their mind if we, ask that a little bit more frequently. Okay, so we often know what we want from our teenagers. What do teenagers want from their parents?
Interesting question, in that there was a survey I was looking at where they asked teenagers, about 2,000 teenagers, about 15-year-olds, what would you tell your parents? Like, what tips would you tell your parents about how to make your relationship better? Because, honestly, I've never met, in all this time of mentoring and teaching, I've never met a teenager that's come to me and said, Miss Alvir, I want the worst possible relationship with my parents. And that's the last thing they want. They want a good relationship, even though, sometimes you think, really, do they? But they do. They definitely, think about it. Parents and mentors and teachers are the most stable, predictable, hopefully, people in their lives at this moment. Their life is going through hormonal changes, psychological changes, peer changes. And so they need rocks in their lives, people who they can come back to and know they're unconditionally loved. So that's why I'm so big on the communication side. But these are the 10 tips that these teenagers, 15-year-olds, said to develop this good, healthy relationship, a positive relationship. One was, look at us. And I find this so actually quite touching now, because this was a few years ago, but imagine now with the phones. Sometimes I say to the girls, hey, put that down. And they're like, what about you, Miss Alvir? I'm like, yep, sorry. Yep, I'm with my phone as well. So we ourselves need to put our phones down, or be present. To spend time talking with us, listen, be available. 4, be dependable, that whole predictability, that stability. 5, show appreciation for what we do. They do. I'm not saying praise them for things they haven't done, give them awards for getting up in the morning and, just doing. Don't pay for chores. Seriously, that should be their contribution to the family. That's my thing. So show them appreciation for what they do, but praising and saying, well done. That was really, and not so much praising a result, which we all can tend to do, but praise a virtue, praise a strength, praise something that you've seen them do that's shown their capacity as a human being more in terms of their character. I think that's fantastic, because that's something they can keep building on. Maybe the next time they can't get, 99%, and they'll feel like, oh, I'm letting my mum down, but they can put effort in that, whatever they're doing. Interestingly enough, number 6 was relax. So obviously we're all a bit intense.
They say that quite often. Relax.
Relax. Yeah. 7, show that you're interested. 8, laugh with us, and laugh at yourself.
Dad
and
jokes.
I definitely, that's right. And I think that's another thing, because they already get so embarrassed and they get so self-conscious. But if they also see that we can laugh at ourselves, it helps them to, to take life not too seriously. Okay, 9 was ask us to help you. So they do feel like they have something to contribute to the family and to, to their parents. And then number 10, interestingly enough, was challenge us. So that reminded me of John Paul too. He said, teenagers want to be challenged. They want to be demanded, because in a way you're saying, I trust you can rise to the occasion, So those were interesting things from the survey. And I would like to add, just make family life really enjoyable. Make the family a place where they want to go back to. Sometimes we give the best of ourselves at work or to the neighbor or to other people, and then we don't have much left over to give to our teens, and they kind of trigger us off. Like, we come home, instead of like going, okay, I'm just going to, give time, we just see, get the pajamas off the floor, why didn't you do your chores? We become like informational naggers instead of like communicators. So I think that's really important to make family life enjoyable as well. So.
It's 2 things from that. You said the number 10 was challenge us, and as soon as you said that, I thought, wow, it's almost like they're saying trust us us that you can challenge us, and then you confirm that with what St. John Paul said. But the other thing, I think that you made an awesome point at the end about, allow the family home to be enjoyable. It's also, I suppose, it's allow it to be that safe space where they can be themselves. Sometimes we said that already as well, that there's so much pressure to conform, maybe to who they're actually not from the outside. We know as parents that we come home, to a safe space, away from all those pressures, from external pressures from work, etc. I had that problem myself. I'd come home, and even just for that first 10 minutes, say hello and all that, and sit down, kind of just want to wind down a bit. And then everyone's kind of, dad's home and, in your face type of thing. That's beautiful, but, we can react because we're trying to wind down. So what a friend of mine said that he does, and I thought this was excellent. He told me this about 10 years ago. So I've tried to put it into practice. Is just to do that winding down outside, before you come into the family home, so that when you're home, you're present to them, to your children, to your wife, and you're able to, come in with an energy that what's happening at home is the most important thing, which, it is. It's more important than work. That's, as a dad, as a mum, that's our first vocation. Okay. So I just talked a little bit there about how I could maybe communicate in a negative way, maybe because I'm winding down and I don't really want communication. Just give me the 10 minutes. It mightn't be very healthy. Let's move beyond something that's unhealthy. How do we have positive interactions with our teenage children? How do we move into that significant heart-to-heart conversation?
Great, because it's so... having that heart-to-heart conversation is the only way you will know where they really are, what Pope Francis was talking about. Obviously, you can know by observing them, but what's deepest in them, it's beautiful. It's like they're sharing that gift to you, but they'll only share that gift when they know the recipient is going to take it with, in a way, I love that thought of when Moses comes and he sees the burning bush, he takes his shoes off because it's sacred ground. Like when your teenager opens up to you, that's sacred ground, because they don't have to anymore. They're autonomous and they're free. So the fact that they're opening up is a gift. So not the worst thing, but the hardest thing is sometimes it's like when you're just about to go to bed and you're like, oh, do you need to share this gift right now? Like you're exhausted or it's not the right time. Obviously, sometimes we need to say, sorry, darling, I've got to do something else. But definitely, I know one dad, he's a very busy man. He goes, oh, okay, sorry, darling. We're going to get my booking and I'll book you in, like, you know, and really professional. Like, you're just as important as all my other meetings. And the daughter loves it. She's like, my dad booked me in. We're going to have a chat, blah, blah, blah. So, or like they do dad, daughter, dad dates. So I think there has to be moments where there's going to be sacrifice in terms of making this heart-to-heart conversation happen. Does that make sense?
Of course it does.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I've been there, done that, and you actually know that it's a different conversation. There's a different engagement.
Yeah.
And I think as soon as you sense that, I don't think I'd go for the let's make a booking. I think because sometimes they're not in the same space again. I'll probably say that. They mightn't be in the same space when you make the booking that they want to be as open.
Yeah, it's true.
So I think that sensitivity, just to
Absolutely.
be listening, what you said before about look at us, that's a look at us moment.
Yeah.
And, that is, drop everything if you can.
Yeah.
Unless something really serious is happening, drop what you can and just listen, and even just the dropping things, physical, I'm putting something down, let's just walk this way, or, let's go for a walk out the front, whatever.
Yeah.
Totally. They will remember that. They will remember, Mum did that for me, Dad did that for me, and Dad will do that for me, Mum will do that for me, and with the takeaway. So definitely I resonate with what
actually what you said is totally true. If you're super, it's impossible, but the ideal is that's the timing is really important, and you won't know how important it is unless you're looking them like in the face. Because their face will show whether this is a moment that I really need you, or it's just like, I actually just want your credit card or something. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I really need you. So I think definitely to look at them and put things down, because I would say the most precious element in a healthy teen parent relationship is dialogue, definitely. And so, and as how you pointed out before, what you took is like to bring the best of me so that I can bring the best of them. Part of the dialogue, especially if it is something more serious or an area of conflict, is they're going to learn the way we speak to them, the way we dialogue, the way we can be also assertive and clear, at the same time compassionate, understanding. They are learning those actual skills from us. They're learning virtues in that moment with the way we are dealing with them. So for me, I also think, like, sometimes, I'm just tired. It's really, stressful. I'm dealing with 30 different kids in one go, but I have to keep reminding myself, Katrina, talk to this girl as if she's your one and only daughter. Respect her as if she was your own child. Like, I can't talk to her like whatever, no, of course we have bad days, but like, no excuses. It's a soul right in front of me. So Beautiful. It actually really lifts your game as a human being yourself. If parenting or teaching does not bleed virtue out of you, I don't know what will. It's like, it's intense, man, so, but that's the beauty of it. I think at the end of the day, they make us better too. If we respond with the best of ourselves, we have to thank our kids or thank our teens for like basically helping us grow up as well. Do you know what I'm saying?
100%, 100%. Look, I know that you have a toolkit. Okay. This is in terms of positive communication. Can we just look at that? Maybe just name it, and let's just maybe put that into some concrete practice. What it looks like.
So Toolkit is really important, because I read this really funny quote. It said, if your only tool is a hammer, you treat everything like a nail. So we don't want to treat everything the same way. We want to have a bit of, different things to use. So I like this acronym. It's called BEST, which goes with that, bringing the best. And it basically stands for a few different things. So B is body language. I think your body language has to match your meaning. So if you're like, yes, I want to listen to you, I want to be understanding, but you're rolling your eyes, you're kind of standing over them, you're looking really intense, that's not matching.
Got the phone in my hand.
Yeah, exactly. I really want to listen to you. You got the phone in your hand and you're like doing something else. I think definitely think about like that your body language matches your communication. Then E is like eye contact or lack thereof, especially girls. Girls really need eyeball to eyeball. One little girl, mom said to me when she was putting her daughter to bed, she said, Mom, come back. I didn't see your eyes. And she's like
wow.
3 years old. She's, Mommy, I need to see your eyes. You know, it's very cute. Boys might find that a bit more creepy. I think boys need to do side to side, like doing something with them, and they might open up more. But definitely that eye contact is really conducive to also understanding like what they're feeling, looking into, you know, how they're feeling at that moment. S is say appropriate things. What does that mean? Like, this is harder to do than it seems, because sometimes we have reached the end of our tether. And so we're trying to correct, or we're trying to, you know, teach them something, and we become sarcastic. We can become condescending. We can become disrespectful, or we start actually criticizing them rather than the behavior. You're like, you're just so freaking lazy. And you're like, no, that was a lazy behavior. You know what I mean? Like, and then it sort of, they crumble up and they can't take the message anymore, because remember, they're at that stage where their identity, they're being formed, and they already are insecure and a bit like, oh, I made a mistake. Oh, I'm just going to hide it, you know? So say how you feel and what you mean in a more direct way. So for example, instead of going, oh, great, am I the slave of this house? You know how sometimes we can say stupid things like that. Anyway, instead saying something like, oh, it's really important to me that we keep the house clean, and I really appreciate your help. When you eat something, do you mind maybe putting that in the dishwasher? That would just make my life so much easier, and I really love, I'd love to see that. So it's positive, it's direct, you're telling them what you want, you're telling them why you want it, and there's no sarcasm there. And that's gonna be clearer communication than just sort of saying it in a kind of roundabout way. Absolute words aren't good, like you never, you always, I think that already puts their back up. Another really cool thing that I like to use, it's called alignment, because sometimes they just want to come and they want to have a fight. They're in this fighting kind of mood, and you know it. So you just align. So for example, a girl will come to me and say, oh, Miss Alvir, you know what? I really, really don't like geography. And then I'll say, yeah, actually, I didn't like it as well when I was in high school. And suddenly she's like, what? No fight. What happened there? And then you talk about like, but what can we do with that? You know, like obviously you've got another year of it. Like what kind of things, what skills, or maybe some good like character virtues you can learn by pushing through. And so instead of like always everything's a fight, everything's like, oh, how dare you say that? Oh, that is so rude. Wait till your grandma hears that. No, like you just say, oh, okay. Try to align. Obviously, there's some things you can't align with. Okay, so but some things we can align with a lot of things. Tone of voice as well. Obviously, that's part of it. That's the T, which is we're not trying to hurt. We're not trying to hurt. To have be mindful and try to be sincere, because also they can kind of hear that tone of voice when you're like being a bit fake about it. So it's really tricky. And all of this while you're in a conversation, it's tricky. Yeah. And we have triggers as well. There's certain it's good to know your triggers. Like, no, what are the topics that just get me already, in a bit of a huff. And then you're ready to sort of go, okay, I've got to calm down. So, we all have our triggers. It could be chores. It could be bedtime. It could be technology. It could be dating, or whatever it could be, So
can we just jump into that trigger situation, because that's concrete, and often at those times, that's when as parents, to use their language, we lose it. Yeah. You're always losing it. So what about if we are in a trigger situation, and our children, as you said, they're always watching, they know us. What's something that parents can do when they feel like all of a sudden, they've gone from 0 to 1,000, in half a second? What can parents do there?
Yeah, I actually think timing is pretty much everything. So I don't think actually having that conversation when you're really highly triggered is going to get you anywhere. They're just going to leave that conversation thinking like, Mum's so moody, or Dad's just like some aggro man. I think you just to say, look, this is something your dad and I have to think about a little bit together. We're a united force against you. No, we're a united force, and we need to figure out like what's the best way to handle this. And that buys you a little bit of time. And also you actually do need to, if it's something that's really triggering you, it is good because maybe you can check with your spouse whether you're overreacting or it's really something that's important. So I do think it's better to talk later than right at that spot. And with timing, on the other hand, like sometimes you're really triggered in the morning and you're in the car. Don't try to give a lecture in the car because it's the worst. Like, who wants to get lectured before they go to school? You know, no
and there's
one's
no eye contact.
Yeah, there's no eye contact, and you're just going to get nowhere. So in fact, you say, hey, we'll talk about this when you get back, and they'll probably at least reflect on the topic at school, you know. So definitely, if you can hold off the conversation, if you're really triggered, that's so much better, you know. So because you'll be calm, and you'll also remember, the point is we want to give them reasons. And when you get emotionally hijacked, the only part of your brain that's going to work is your emotional part, and you're not going to have any rational or well thought out reasons, and they'll just think, oh, that's a silly reason. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Of course. Okay, look, we've been speaking for a long time. We're getting close, unbelievably, to, to the back end of our conversation. Look, I just want to come back to, I mentioned it in the introduction to yourself. This is your real expertise. You've even written about it recently in the In Alliance journal, which is a leading international publication promoting the advancement of girls' education. In that paper, you spoke about the REAL program, of which you're the director. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about that in closing, just in case there's parents out there that might want to know a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So if you want to read it, you can Google up Real Character Program, Learning and Living the Science of Character. And it's with the Alliance of Girls' Schools Australasia, but it's pretty long. So I'll just sum it up for you because you're very busy people. But it's just about this program that I've created where it marries like positive psychology interventions, which are really, really like cool stuff, the neuroscience to help girls to understand like how their brain works, but also all the virtues and character formation. I find but once they get to high school, they need a little bit more buy-in. And so this is using the science behind it and also getting them, I called it real because I think the kids are just sick of having to create an image or an identity all 2D, just to keep reminding them like, you are not 2-dimensional, you're 3-dimensional, and you have a soul, you have a spirit, and people should love you, not just for the, what the image you put out on social media, but you should be also working. If you put in as much time on your character as you did on your digital profile, what kind of amazing person would you be? So we look at things like 4 areas: strong minds, so resilience of minds, all the character habits and virtues that to do with, how they think. Strong hearts, all their emotional intelligence and how to handle in a healthy way their strong emotions during their adolescence. Strong will, so everything to do with self-control, delayed gratification, willpower, making plans, sticking to it. And then strong connections, because really at the end, what is the point of having all these virtue if you can't love other people, if you can't serve society, if you can't use it to make the world a better place? So, and also the thing is, strong connections give us meaning in life, give us love. And in the end, so I keep saying to the girls, do you think a phone can love you back? I don't think so. How many likes till you're loved? 1 million likes?
Wow.
1 million likes to your love? 2 million likes to your love? I said, if you after 10 likes you felt love, you wouldn't have to keep posting. One post would be enough, but and it's just getting them to think like what you're really looking for is something that only God and your other people, your future husband, your future wife, your children will give you. And I think that's, I have social media, I have nothing against it, but I think it's when it kind of like replaces real love with this dopamine hits of what seems like love, So that's what I go through in the Real program.
That could be one of those things that parents stick, or they talk about, at least with their children. How many likes till I'm loved? Wow, that is so powerful. So powerful. Katrina, one last thing that I want to ask you before my final question. So this is the penultimate question. We're in lockdown, and all our children are in front of screens right now, doing their education. Downtime might be again back on the screen to see what's happening out there. You're a lover of beauty, and we know that the church has always put forward this way of beauty. We see it in the great artworks of history and the great architecture, and so entwined with living the Christian life, because as you led out with today, that as a human person, we're attracted in a very natural way that's inherent to us to what's true, what's good, and what's beautiful. What might young people or parents, what could parents do right now to try to draw their children, their teenagers, away from the screens and into this way of beauty?
Great question. So I can't remember who said this quote, but they said, "The world will be saved by beauty."
I know who it is, but I can't pronounce his name. Dostoevsky.
Okay. Oh, Dostoevsky, yeah. And I think, well done. So what I think it is so true, because sadly we've become a very relativistic world. And for some people, intellectual reasons, you're not even starting off with like the basis of like reality, true, it's so subjective. So that's many teenagers won't kind of buy into that, or they'll just find another argument against what you've just told them. But I think there's something very captivating and kind of like awe-inspiring, like takes your breath away when you see something really beautiful. And one girl was saying to me, one way she found God was she just saw a really beautiful like sunset at the beach, and she found herself not even realizing but saying thank you. But then she thought, who am I saying thank you to? And she's like, God, and I think that is a way of like rediscovering that the creation has been made for them. Many times I tell the girls, your homework tonight is to get off the screen, and when the sun goes down and it's dark, you go into your backyard, you lie down on the grass, and you just look at the stars, and you remember that those stars are made for you by your Father God. And they're like, yeah, that's the best homework. I'm like, do I have to write anything? No, don't write anything. One girl sent me an email with her doing it. She's like, Miss Alvir, this is great homework. So, but sometimes, unless we give them those opportunities to just stop, to bring them out to nature, just turn off all devices, it's like they can't experience the beauty of nature and the beauty of like that God, their fathers, made all of this for them. It's I can't even explain it in words, but I think many people come back to God that way. And so really create experiences where your kids can just be in nature. It also just takes their anxiety down. I just find girls are like, oh my gosh, I felt really anxious because I had to leave my phone at home. But after a while being in the bush or being at the beach, they're like, yeah, they actually feel more calm. It's like they're coming back to themselves. They're like not on the screen, sort of disengaged with their own body. They're like back in their body again, seeing the world with their own eyes. So definitely, I think beauty is the way to go.
And one of the benefits, obviously, of this, of being locked in, is that there is that desire to go out.
Yes.
I mean, the healthy way for a human person, obviously, is to go out of ourselves, go out of ourselves, not to be turned in. So this might be, one of the positives, even just to think, we'll have that conversation with our teenagers. What do you want to do? What, is there a dream that you want to go somewhere, or, do something? That might be a turning away, even to have a conversation in that regard as well. Okay.
In fact, that's when someone's gone through and is going to the next phase of their life, becoming an adult, is that they don't only look after themselves, they can look after others, that going out of themselves. Definitely.
Let's keep encouraging that. Okay, so the final question, I just want to again make this very practical for parents, and just in our last two conversations, we've asked for the top 3 tips, from our guest expert So, Katrina, what are your top 3 tips for parents as they try their best? All parents, I think want the best for their children, so they're trying their best to help their teenage children grow into those young adults that our world really, really needs.
Great question. Okay, so I would say one is, someone said, hurry is the enemy of love. It's not because you don't want to love your teens. I don't want to not love my students, but hurry. I'm just in a hurry. So I miss things. I'm not present and I don't appropriately, communicate to them. So that's definitely like being present. 2 is like throw everything you've got into these teen years. The days are long, but the years are short. So it's really worth it. Like, think about it. These will be the parents of your grandchildren in that sense. Like you're trying to, helping them to get to adulthood. So it is a long time, but it won't be forever. But throw everything you have into it right now. And then the third one is example is more powerful than words. I think it was St. Francis that said, preach always, and when necessary, use words. So dads, be the kind of man you want your daughter to marry, and mums, be the kind of woman you want your son to marry. Like, be that example, be that role model, because no matter how many influencers they watch, no matter how many YouTube celebrities they watch, like, you are the most realist thing to them because you're flesh and blood. You're not on a screen. And in the end, you will be what they remember when all of those influencers, aren't cool anymore. Yep. So that's my...
And just a reminder, I think we might have even mentioned this in the previous episode, but after all the data and we see who the biggest influence on our young people are, it remains, and this is them naming it, their parents. Their parents are the biggest influences. So those 3 things, just to remind everyone: hurry is the enemy of love, be fully present. Remember what Katrina said, that they want us to look at them. Throw everything you've got. If we're going to have passion, and it's good to even remember what the word passion means. It means to be able to suffer, to suffer for, and to stop what we're doing and to throw everything we've got in, to be so intentional into being there for our children at this age is number 2. And the last one, example is more powerful, is more powerful than words. Okay, you've also got, I hear, a little bonus.
You can, I just can keep talking, but anyway, I'll have to shut up soon. But I think the bonus is, like, just never stop talking to your children. Never give up, even if it's stressful, because it is sometimes at the first result. Even if they close the door on you, you have to, like, assure them that nothing in the world can stop you from loving them and wanting to talk to them. And then obviously the unity between husband and wife, because they are so good at playing you guys off each other. They'll try to, get away with things. But I think if they know that you two are, like, really united and, you touch base often, you've got your goals, what your, the core values are, then, the battle's won.
Fantastic. Katrina, it has been an absolute pleasure to have this conversation with you this evening, and to hear all your practical advice that's not only been drawn out of your experience with our young people, but also that huge investment of your own time in order to really understand who they are as persons. And we can only really understand who they are as persons because we care and that we have a heart for it. And I can see that even in what you've said and in the passion that you've shown in speaking to this, that you have a really big heart. You have a really expanded heart in order to take this in order to give that back to our young people and all the parents, not only those that you work for, but all those who have been listening to us this evening. So thank you so much, Katrina, for being here. And I really know that the parents who have journeyed with us this evening are going to take away so much. So thank you, all you parents that are here listening into this episode 3 of Parenting Conversations. I'm learning so much, and I'm sure that you are as well. Please join us again for our final episode, episode 4, as we look at Parenting Conversations, the adult years. Thank you, everybody. Have a lovely evening. Take care, and God bless. Bye-bye.